Good morning. It is 10 o'clock, so we will start the meeting. Welcome to the Place and Resources Overview Committee of the 19th of October. I won't go through the normal processes and procedure for members. I think we've all done this many times before now. So we'll move straight to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies. Do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor David Taylor.
Thank you. I've also received apologies from Councillor Jill Haynes, the portfolio holder for one of the items. Item 2, the minutes. Can I confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of September and sign them as the true record? And of course, the physical signing will happen when we get back into the offices. Is everybody content that those are a true and accurate record? I hear nothing, so I'll take that as as accepted. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations under the Code of Conduct? I hear nothing. Members are reminded that if they realise they have an interest at any time during the meeting, please make us aware so we can record that interest. Thank you. Moving on to item 4, which is the Chairman's updates. I have a couple of items. Just to let you all know, as per discussions with the chairs and monitoring officer, we've decided that the monitoring of performance indicators will lie with scrutiny and not this committee. Therefore, it's been removed from our agenda. When the new performance platform is ready, members will be trained and it will become available via a link on our papers in the future. Item 2 is the policy library. I've created a spreadsheet of the 93 policies which lie in the place area. These have been made available to cabinet members and to lead members, and I'm hoping they can prioritise those policies for our work programme. I'm aware that officers are doing a similar piece of work, so hopefully soon we'll have a number of prioritised policies for our work plan as we go ahead. Item 3 is a general message about today. We have 2 very well written policies to review, and at this point I think I would like to thank the officers for the work that has been done on these policies. Item 5, public participation. We have no questions or statements today. Agenda item 6. Just waiting to catch up and be blown up on the screen. Thank you. We are here to review the draft statement on licensing policy and to provide any comments to the licensing committee, in this case, for the meeting on the 22nd of October. The reporting officer is John Newcomb, who's the Service Manager Licensing and Community Safety. We actually are looking at the policy statement and how it is defined within the council policy plan. It will exercise its responsibilities under the Act. The draft policy has been prepared by officers, published in draft format. The public consultation took place between the 6th of July and the 27th of September. The review of statement licence policy will ultimately go to full council for adoption. So, John, if we could ask you to give the report, please.
Certainly, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, this is the Council's licensing policy under the 2003 Act. A little bit later on, we'll be talking about the gambling policy, but this primarily relates to alcohol, entertainment, pubs, clubs, off licenses, etc. So it is a statutory requirement that we have a licensing policy, and as you've rightly said, Chair, it shows how we are going to promote the 4 licensing objectives under the Act. The draft has been produced. It is a complete redraft. It's not a rehash of an existing policy. However, we did look at all of the predecessor council policies and we pulled out any of the good bits that we thought we could carry forward. It is more robust in terms of enforcement, and it also includes a set of model conditions which can be applied to licenses on individual merit basis. I suppose the key issues, the key parts of the policy for note are that we are proposing to keep the existing cumulative impact area in Weymouth, where there's a high concentration of licensed premises within a very small geographical area, and this is backed up by 2 reports, one using internal council data and one from Dorset Police, and they're both included within the appendices to the report. There's also a draft equalities impact assessment, and Chair, just an update that this has been through the Equality and Diversity Action Group. There are a couple of changes that are pending. It's going to be updated into the proper format, Dorset Council format, and that will be all done ready in time for it to go to full council, which at the moment is proposed for December. We are legally required to have this policy in place by the 1st of April 2021, and that's from the Department for DHCLG, so Housing, Communities, Local Government, and it will last for 5 years. The cumulative impact area has to be reviewed at least every 3 years, so it will get a little bit complicated, but you know, it's a 5-year policy in effect. So prior to running the consultation, the draft policy went before licensing committee at an informal meeting chaired by Councillor Emma Parker, and then it also went to Cabinet for information, and then we ran a 12-week consultation. There is a list of all of the bodies that we contacted as a part of that consultation. It was widely publicised, and as you've already mentioned, Chair, there were 24 responses, which are summarised at Appendix E. In relation to the retention of the cumulative impact zone, 16 of those responses were in favour of retaining and or expanding actually the cumulative impact area, and there were no objections received to retaining that cumulative impact area. Chair, I have made a few amendments to the policy following review of the consultation responses. They have been summarised within the report, and then also the draft policy has been updated using tracked changes, so that everything that I've changed is highlighted in red, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
That's excellent, John. Thank you very much. One point I have just before I go on is very minor. The use of 12 and 24-hour clocks throughout the policy. There's a mixture of both. And I think it might be useful if we stick to the, in my opinion, the 24-hour clock, but one of the, or the other would be useful. Questions from committee members? Have we got any questions from members? I'll go down my list. Councillor Fry.
No, I think it's a very good policy. I'm very impressed with what John has done, the work he's done behind it. I raised one issue which he's aware of, and I think that's in relation to the days for temporary events they can have there. Other than that, I think it's a really good, robust policy. The secret behind this is enforcement and action to be taken, and that's built into the policy anyway. So thank you. No other questions.
Thank you. Councillor Batstone, are you with us? I didn't see Councillor Batstone.
Absolutely.
Good to hear from you, Pauline. Have you got any questions?
Thing again there. No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hope. Sorry.
You've got an RTS from Roland Tarr. Councillor
Tarr, I'll come to you in a minute. We're going to go through all the committee members, I think, just to make sure they're still awake. Councillor Hope.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you.
Good morning.
No, I'd just like to commend the officer on a very good piece of work, and I think it's very in-depth and very detailed.
I must confess the lack of, I can understand the lack of questions because it is an excellent policy. Councillor Gisperson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have no questions. It's a very sound policy, and I think our thanks to the officers, but also to the licensing committee, and in particular the chair of the licensing committee, Councillor Emma Parker, because they're also responsible for this sound piece of work. Thank you.
That's excellent, thank you. I will remind members that I think the Vice Chair is here this morning as well, Councillor John Andrews, if we need him for anything. Councillor Jones.
No, I'm very happy with it. I know also that Emma Parker would not have let anything slip through no matter what. So she's very, very thorough, and she's perfect to chair this committee. So if she's happy, I'm happy.
Thank you. Councillor Pothcary.
Thank you, Chair. Well, boring as it may sound, I agree with everybody else. I think it's a really good policy. the officers have done really good work on this. I was concerned when I first saw that we only had 24 responses, in fact only 21 real comments, but as you read through you realise that there's a damn good reason for that, and I think it's because of the strength of the policy.
Yep, yeah, my thoughts as well, thank you. Councillor Starr.
Thank you, Chair. Ditto, really. Good policy. I can see no flaws in it whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Tarr.
I just really wanted to back up what Councillor Fry said. He's got personal experience of all these things in his former work, so I wanted to back that up. That's why I put the RPS up. The only other question I have, whilst we've got the experts here, is the idea of the levy, which would pay for better policing when things get out of hand in the various towns where things do occasionally get out of hand. And I just wondered if anybody's available to say whether I know Dorset Town Council brought this up, whether we should get businesses to actually pay for some of the damage they cause when they're making lots of money out of selling alcohol.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Tarr. I was actually going to raise that myself, because on 9.1 it does talk about the late night levy, and it enables the licensed authority to charge a levy to persons who are licensed to sell alcohol, particularly between the hours of midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning. I looked at 9.3, which basically says the licensed authority is not currently satisfied that it is appropriate to introduce a late night levy, and I wanted to gauge committees. Just let me finish. If you just wanted to gauge the committee's opinion whether that not should be deleted, and the reason for doing so is that obviously the authority can then use that in the future if it's required to do so. It's not a case of actually putting a levy on anybody at this stage, but it's the ability to do so in the future. My thoughts personally, after speaking to the PCC about this, who supports the late night levy, I should add, that we should make this single change, or recommend this single change to the licensing committee when they review this before it's moved on to full council. So I just wanted to gauge members' thoughts on that.
Chair, can we have the 9.1 up on the screen, please? Can we have that moved up? Chair, I think that's a good idea. I would support and second your suggestion and proposal. I think having the ability to consider a late night levy, and having had conversations with you about this and researched the matter, it's actually very proportionate, appropriate and justified in certain areas. When there's a problem, you can then bring this in, and it's something we don't have to implement if there is no problems. We wait until there's a problem in this particular area and then could apply it in that appropriate case.
Yeah, and I did speak to Jonathan Mayer, our head of legal services, about whether this would delay the policy moving forward, and apparently it doesn't have to. The policy can move forward. That can be an amendment for future work for the licensed authority to do in the future as a minor amendment. So it won't hold the policy up. It won't cause any issues on that side of life. I see no reason. Are there any other members that think this should or should not be included? And it's just an opinion going forward to the licensing committee at this stage from this committee.
Well, I'd just like to say again that I think it's a good idea, and even the threat of the levy might in fact improve behaviour in the towns concerned, because the societies which exist to regulate these things, or self-regulate, would get hold of each other and say, look, we've got to put a stop to this, we don't want to pay these extra charges. So it might be quite a beneficial effect to have.
Thank you, Councillor. I would not use the word threat, that's for sure, but there is an element of a message from the council to those premises. If there are no other opinion, I'd just like to take a quick vote on that next. We have
Chair, there's a request to speak from Councillor Jesperson.
Sherry, yes.
Yes. Before we vote on it, I would find it helpful to hear either from the officers or from the chair or vice chair of the licensing committee in case there's a reason that they didn't put this in that we haven't thought of. So that just belt and braces here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I did speak to John Andrews yesterday. John, I don't think Emma's here, but John definitely is.
Emma is here.
Emma is here. Emma.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you.
Morning.
I would like to go to John Newcombe for him to explain the reasons for this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, happy to pick this up. Chair, I as you were aware, we have spoken about this previously, only very recently, of course. It is something that we can look at. It's not necessary to delay the policy or amend the policy in order to allow us to consider a late night levy. We have got licensing committee coming up on Thursday. I was proposing to bring this up at licensing committee for consideration with a view to preparing a report on what a late night levy might look like, how much income it might bring in, how many premises are likely to be affected, and whether there's the data to back it up from the police, from Dorset Police. That was something I was going to raise on Thursday with the chair, and then once licensing committee have had a chance to consider that report, then a late night levy proposal can be prepared and that can go out to consultation. So that can happen at any time, Chair. So this licensing policy at the moment, we don't have a late night levy. However, we can consider bringing one in at any time. It doesn't have to be as a part of this policy. It can be a separate item. Just for note, Chair, it does apply to the whole of Dorset Council area. You can't just apply it to a specific region. It would apply to every single premises that were open after a specified time, and that time can start any time between midnight and 6 AM. There is an ability to exclude types of premises from the late night levy, but it is in effect a surcharge, an extra tax on premises, which may or may not be politically viable under these current circumstances where our licensed premises are struggling to survive, and that will all go into the report which goes before licensing committee for consideration. If you're happy for us to deal with it like that, then Chair, then that would be my recommendation.
Yep, no, I can fully understand that. That's good that it's going to licensing, because that would only be a recommendation from the committee anyway, just to look at it. I mean, we're not asking for it. I would just mention. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, there's a request from Councillor Hope. We've got a few questions, people wanting to speak when you can.
Okay, give me a couple of seconds. I was going to just mention that most people expect the late night levy to go to the police force. The reality is the vast majority of the money will go to the police force, but it can be used also by the local authority to prevent crime, disorder, promote public safety, even to clean the highways. So there are lots of use of the levy, but I'm content. Councillor Fry, can you bring in the
yeah, it's Councillor Hope first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My concern with this late night levy is already the late night sector do have to pay a lot within private security and bits and pieces to operate, and the issue that requires additional policing quite often isn't in relation to the activity of these late night venues, although what they provide is an appeal for people to go out in those hours. Majority of people that go out and cause trouble within those hours have been drinking from the early evening before they go out. So I think, you know, the late night levy would be an unfair levy to apply to our late night venues, when actually it would be the supermarkets and corner off licenses that are actually creating the issue more than the late night venue.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hope.
Thank you. And then Councillor Andrews next, please.
Me.
Councillor John Andrews.
Thank you, Chairman. I know I'm not a member of the committee, but I am a member of the licensing committee and vice chairman. But understand where you're coming from on this, but I will say that at the moment we have revoked some licenses on the licensing subcommittees, and the licensing committee have revoked some licenses, and there is a right to review on every license that is in the Dorset Council area, and we've used that right, and I think the message has already started getting home to some that it will be used if necessary to revoke a license for individual premises that are causing certain problems. So we have the right to review it later on if we want to, but I would take your comments on, and the licensing committee will review it on Thursday, and I just like bring that to the fore, that we have the right to review any license, and anybody can call that in. The police can, and members of the public can. So I would just bring that to your minds.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Andrews.
Next is Councillor Jesperson, please.
Yes, thank you. Having started this hair running, yes, I would like formally to suggest that we follow the course of action outlined by John Newcombe, who's that this goes to the licensing committee, because we can see already that there's two sides to this debate, and it would be quite inappropriate, I think, a little bit invidious, if we were to, having just been out to a big consultation, we were to bring something as big, as major as this into the policy after the consultation. It wouldn't be very transparent. So I very much like the route that was outlined, and I would recommend that we recommend to the licensing committee that they do exactly that, and it can come back to us at any time if it needs to. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, just to confirm, your point was that you would take out that word that's in the policy at the moment to allow others to consider, research and discuss and consult on the issue of the late night levy. This committee is not saying we will bring one in. What we're suggesting is it is considered.
Yeah, that's correct. It's just the removal of the one word. However, I hear what Councillor Jesperson just said, and I've heard that what Councillor Andrews says. So I'm content to withdraw that recommendation because it's happening anyway. So if members are content, we will move forward in that respect, as long as it is noted in our comments, which will go to the licensing committee anyway. I'm happy with that.
Chairman, it's Lindsay. Can I just check, because obviously that was a proposal that was also seconded by Councillor Fry. So is Councillor Fry also happy that that is withdrawn and dealt with in that manner?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation was purely to review the policy and to provide comments for the licensing committee. I think we have done that. So if members are content, we will move on to item 7. Which is the statement of gambling policy, and again the report officer is John Newcombe. John, if you'd like to give the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is Dorset Council's new gambling licensing policy. So this relates to all of our gambling premises, which are primarily betting shops and family entertainment centres, adult gaming centres. We don't have any casinos, so it covers all of the premises that we licence within the Dorset Council area. So it is a brand new policy. We did review all of the predecessor council policies, and it was felt that we should have a brand new one, which is what we've done, and we've drafted that together. It's followed a very similar route to the licensing policy. So the draft was produced, it went before licensing committee, it went before cabinet for information, it went out for exactly the same 12-week consultation period. There weren't as many responses as has been pointed out already. However, these have been summarised in the appendices, and then a number of amendments made to the policy, which again have been highlighted in red at Appendix A. I think it's just important to note, Chair, that the gambling policy in the pecking order, for want of a better word, is actually a little bit lower down under gambling. We as a local authority, we have one hand tied behind our back already by the Gambling Act, because there is an aim to permit. So if somebody applies for a premises licence to open up a gambling premises within Dorset Council area, we're obliged to grant it unless there's an incredibly good reason not to. And where local authorities have tried to refuse licences in the past or tried to revoke licences in the past, they've come up against the huge financial might of the gambling industry and have failed, unfortunately. Chair, I've made this policy as robust as I can for the protection of Dorset Council residents, for those vulnerable people, for children, for those who might be harmed by gambling. We cannot overstep the mark when it comes to policies, bearing in mind there have been judicial reviews at Canterbury back in 2004 springs to mind, where they tried to make their licensing policy too prescriptive. So we've made it as robust as we possibly can. I won't go into my thoughts about gambling. That's not for this time, for this forum. However, I am satisfied that this policy is as robust as it can be. We will be requiring all gambling premises operators to prepare local risk assessments based on the local risks, and we will also be reviewing those risk assessments and making sure that they are up to scratch. We have a very robust inspection regime at Dorset Council, where one of the best in the whole country, actually, Chair, where we regularly visit our licensed premises. We've never sent back a zero return on inspections to the Gambling Commission, and we always try to ensure that all of our operators are following the relevant codes of practice and complying with their conditions. I don't really think there's anything else to add, Chair, apart from to take any questions.
Thank you, John. Like I said, excellent policy, and yeah, very useful information you've just added this morning. Are there any questions from members?
Chair, I'll just congratulate John and the team and all those in licensing who've done a really good job on this policy. It is as robust as it possibly can be. The key matter is that we've got the ability to review the license, and we've also got the ability to enforce or take action when appropriate. So I think it covers all bases there. I'm aware that Councillor Parker and Councillor Andrews are doing some very good work around gambling for the future to highlight the issues and problems across Dorset, which I welcome. And I would totally support what John has done and his team have done in preparing this policy. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for that, Les. I won't go through the list again. Are there any members wishing to speak? No,
Chair, there's no questions at the moment.
No, thank you. If that's the case, once again, we're being asked to review the gambling policy, which we have done. Comments have been noted, only positive comments, I must confess. So I'm happy with that, and I'm content that we've reviewed a very, very well written and very well presented policy. Thank you. Moving forward to agenda item 8, which is our draft forward plan. As members are aware, we've actually put within the Teams document the policy information, the policy library information. I've asked members this morning for their top 3, if you like, of priorities, which we might have to put in, or we might put in the plan. But the chairs did meet on the 13th of this month to determine where future committee work would go. So we have actually divided the overview and scrutiny processes and the pairings of those committees. So we've got some things into those work plans. I have received notification on the Reset and Recovery EAP, which is to be handed over to scrutiny or overview, but it's one of the things on the list for this week to do. We've got to read through those policy documents and the reporting document and basically decide which of those 2 committees it's going to go to. So that's something for one of the 2 of us. I've also forwarded the Excel spreadsheet, as I said before, to members and officers doing the same work, which will hopefully give us a prioritised system. And what we're looking for, as well as actually stuff for our work programme, is to start to create working groups, so they can actually pick 2 or 3 members can pick up one of these policies and run with it, and try to hopefully speed up the process of creating Dorset Council's policy library. Are there any members
Chair,
to...
yeah,
Yes.
Councillor Jesperson would like to speak, please.
Councillor Jesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did raise at our last meeting that the single largest piece of policy that this council will be doing anytime soon is the new local plan. And that is my understanding, and that is policy, and it seems to me that ought to be a key item coming to our agenda. Now, my understanding is that the local plan will be going out for consultation in early next year, and it will be going to Cabinet, I think, in the November or December, I'm not sure. So my question is that going to come to this committee? Is it going to come to this committee before it goes out to consultation as well as afterwards? Obviously, it would come to us after it's been, but it seems to me that we could do well to have a look at it before it goes out to consultation, and because I don't see it in the plan, in our forward plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jesperson. I think the issue is I spoke to the portfolio holder, Councillor David Walsh, a couple of days ago. It's the problems arising, I think, from the new government white paper and the many changes that people may or may not agree with, and the impact from those on the local plan could be actually quite large. And I think that's why it's in this state of flux at the moment. We are working with it, and hopefully we will get something through, but I have my doubts. We may have done an awful lot of work and need to do an awful lot more before it comes forward. So it is in train. We are aware of it, and I will be keeping close eye with the portfolio holder to see whether we can get that. I like you, think it should come to overview. It is a policy after all.
Could I ask them, Mr. Chairman? I understand the position at the moment is that the white paper, that the local plan might be delayed by the white paper. My own view is that actually that's getting increasingly less likely as the white paper is getting such a kicking. So, but nonetheless, we have a published timetable for the consultation on the local plan. And as part of that published timetable for that piece of work should be the date when it's coming to this committee. So I would stress again, I would like to see it put into our our work plan in line with the current timetable, and if the timetable slips, then so will our work plan. But I'm not satisfied with the idea that, oh, well, it might get delayed, therefore let's not talk about it yet. I think we should have it timetabled in our work plan, and then we can always slip it if it slips.
It's definitely not the case that we're not talking about it. We certainly are talking about it. Our next meeting, Councillor Jesperson, is the 17th of December. If we can get it into that, or something into that, to actually look at a way forward, I will certainly try to do that.
Thank you.
Other members, are there anything that you looked at on that policy library that you like reviewed and possibly put into the plan? I did have something mentioned from Matthew Piles this morning on an email, whether we should consider the 20-mile-per-hour limit policy within Dorset. It sounds easy, it's quite a lot of work there, and lots of other issues arise from 20-mile-per-hour limits. If members think we should have a look at that or put it onto our list.
Chair, you've got a request to speak from Carol Jones, please.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. You'll have to forgive my ignorance here, but are we limited only to what we can see in terms of ready-made policies? Can we spread the net any wider at all, or are we literally just looking at the list?
No. If you think there's a gap in our policies for anything, then we can certainly look at it and review it.
Okay, I mean, from my point of view, I would like us to be focusing, especially at the moment, on where we're going with economic development, and perhaps to even dig down a little bit deeper in that, because we are limited with grid capacity, and I think we need to dig deep on that one. And also there was an issue which you're aware of last week about the car parking charges. Well, I just think we need a clearer messaging system to be put in place so that we are aware of what is happening before things get published. And these are just the other area that I think is important is our assets. Exactly what is our policy for determining what we do with our assets, and how can we turn that into a situation where we're doing some good with what we've got, or we can maximise profitability in any which way. So that's all from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I would say we discussed the grid capacity issue the other day, and that's been managed by scrutiny. So Councillor Bartlett's taken that one on board because I think we do need it scrutinised as opposed to overviewed. There is, of course, an assets review going on. It's been going on for some time now to actually look at just those issues you raised. So that's in hand. I presume once that review has been completed, it will come to overview to review. Economic development, I've always been a strong believer that we should be increasing our income streams within this council. Said it for a long time, and there are opportunities, and there's opportunities for partnership working to make that happen. So okay, I take those on board. Is there anybody else?
Yes, there's Councillor Batstone, please, Chair.
Councillor Batstone.
Hi, Darrell. My concern is certainly to support the comments of Councillor Jones. I'm very aware of the problems for the economy in our local area, in particular my rural villages, as well as Councillor Jones' patch of Stumston Newton, and it increasingly feels like we take one step forward and then get kicked back again. There is the issue about electricity, as Councillor Jones has mentioned, and also I'm afraid the increase in car parking charges and the hours caused me to take a very sharp intake of breath and considerable concern about the impact of that on our local town economy. Economy isn't just about us taking advantage as a council of what's happening. It's actually about promoting the economy for the well-being of our residents, and that in turn does obviously benefit us. But so supporting what Councillor Jones has just said, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Batstone. I should have responded to Councillor Jones, and I forgot. I have got the car park issue on as an urgent item, which I was going to bring up at item 9. Anybody else?
Chair, Councillor Jesperson, please.
Thank you. Councillor Jesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would, first of all, very, very much like to support the suggestion that one of our earliest policies we could very usefully look at is on 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. The policy at the moment is cumbersome, difficult and expensive, and I think it would be a very popular move if this committee were to review that and make sure that it's no more cumbersome, expensive and difficult than it absolutely needs to be. So I'm not preempting what our conclusion would be, but I think that'd be an extremely useful piece of work.
Excellent.
My second point is on the economic development across the Dorset area. There is, I think, an EAP working on that. Yeah. Presumably that EAP will at some point make some conclusions or recommendations that I would like them just to share with this committee, because it's our area. And I wonder if we could just make a kind of passing note that economic development might be an appropriate area for us to have a working party, or whatever we are calling small working group, to look at if that's at the time when that's helpful to the portfolio holder, because I think it is an area that's extremely problematic going to be extremely problematic in the coming years for all the reasons that we know, and it can get lost in our local authority in other bigger, more immediate things. And if we don't have a prosperous economy, we don't have any income at all, and then we can't do any of our statutory things. So could we just kind of put down a marker that for us not to lose sight of that, and it might be one for a working party perhaps halfway through next year. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jesperson. I don't think we've got a complete answer to what's happening with all the EAPs anyway at the moment. Obviously, the recent recovery is coming to us. That's been concluded. I've noticed a couple of comments in the chat bar, and for the public's point information, there is a little chat bar that runs through down the screen, which they're not aware of, but we get comments from councillors. And the comment from Councillor John Andrews was the EAP on the economic development has been concluded. Another one underneath questioning in that, and I've got Councillor Apothecary wants to speak, so we're not sure. We will check on that, like the rest of the APs, because I'm pretty confident that the leader would like the APs to actually hand it over to scrutiny or overview or whichever committee it needs to go to. There are a number still currently in train. Councillor Apothecary.
Thank you, Chairman. Really, I just wanted to support everything that Councillor Batstone and Councillor Jesperson have already said about our economy. I understand that the EAP's been concluded, but I think we should keep this as a live issue, and I would very much like us to be viewing it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make a note of that. Done. Are there any additions to that? As I said, once we prioritise the existing policies, we will hopefully have more work to do on. Then there's a fair bit of work there already come up this morning, which we can get our teeth into. Okay, I'm content that we've done that. The only other review is that of the Cabinet Forward Plan. Has any members got any questions on the Cabinet Forward Plan? Can you bring that page up to the actual plan, please? Thank you. I said I looked through it. I didn't see any issues that sprung off the page. Any member comments on the Cabinet Forward Plan? No? Okay, we will leave that. Thank you very much. Moving on now to item 9, urgent items, and I have an urgent item. I did consider bringing this to this committee, but I think because of the impact that the decision on car parking has had, that we ought to use the powers of a new committee and looking at acting at pace. We've all talked about working smarter, so I think this is the time to bring this. I have one issue, as I said, Pace, and it was following the press release last week on the car park charges, and a number of member and town councils which have raised issues over this in the last few days. It would appear no consultation took place whatsoever between this council and other councils. It didn't appear to go through most members. We weren't aware of it happening, and it certainly did not go through scrutiny or an overview process. In my opinion, personal opinion, the decision lacked any consideration on its impact and should have made it in consideration with other highways related problems which differ in individual areas. It will also impact on the very low paid. We have lots of people using these very car parks to actually go to work each day, and it's going to double their outgoings. And it will actually may impact on the future devolution of services to town and parish councils with financing those services. And I was going to ask if I could seek committee members' views on this issue. I believe that scrutiny or governance should investigate how the decision was made. That's the first thing. And I also believe that overview and scrutiny should have a highways related full report to them on the impact of such charges. Because I think most people wouldn't quite understand how a simple car park charge can change so many other things, like hunting for car parking spaces across town, actually increasing pollution, the impact on park and ride systems. And I think the thought of actually harmonising a single charge across the Dorset Council area is wholly wrong because of these individual costs and impacts on individual towns and areas, which differ. I think it really does need a lot of work doing to this. And I wonder what members' views are.
Chair, in the absence of other comments, I would support your suggestion that the matter is reviewed and a report back to this committee. As you say, it is difficult, but we don't necessarily need to harmonise all the charges. What we need is to perhaps coordinate all the charges. In my area of Dorset West here, there is a big implication when the hospitals start charging for car parks. The nearby streets cram up as people try and hunt around for parking spaces where they don't have to pay. So the whole thing does need a review, and I would welcome and support that. Now we've got quite a few requests for speaking, please. The first one is Councillor Jesperson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I understand that there is a review of the totality of our car parking policy underway or in train, and so I'd like to know about that before I discuss this further. Could we hear from Councillor Cherry Brooks, if she's still here, who I know is the lead member, and she might be able to help us with this. Or if Ray Bryan is with us yet, Councillor Bryan.
Yep.
Because could we have a bit of context for this, please?
I'm happy to bring in Councillor Brooks, but I would say that it's the impact the car parking charge has, as well as the car parking policy, whatever that means. It's the impact on the things. It's not as simple as simply raising the car parking charge. Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, can I just check that Councillor Bryan isn't on the call?
Oh, thank you. Yep. Councillor Bryan. I knew he has some issues at home and he was going to pop in and out the meeting. So, Councillor Bryan, are you there? Yeah, it would appear not, Cherry,
No,
so it's over to you.
Okay, right. So please bear with me because I'm relatively new to the lead member role. But the discussions that we've had with the officers so far is that we wanted to look. We were given a remit to look at harmonisation as we did with the council tax, and I think that we are under the we're of the belief that actually a blanket charge right the way across Dorset probably isn't the right way to go. So there is some work going on at the moment, but there was a need to correct some of the issues. For instance, Lyme Regis and other car parks that were £2 a day, which was, you know, very, very cheap in comparison to the Weymouth £9 a day. And so there was a decision made based on the fact that we didn't need to go out to consultation for that, to do that immediately and to extend the hours. And that decision was taken immediately. Now, we were told that we didn't have to go out to consultation. I think, to be fair, in future, if we do anything, we perhaps learn that we ought to have a bit more consultation or discussion with the members, but the intention was that to look at the policy and the harmonisation across Dorset or the levy, if you want, that we put on the car parking charges. And at that point, we would have been dealing closely with councillors, parish councils, and gone out to consultation. So this was sort of step one, and that was because we need to claw back some of the revenue that has been lost, and the aim is to go through to step two, and there's a lot of work to be done on that. So, you know, obviously it will come forward for somebody to have a look at, whether it's overview or scrutiny, when the time is right.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you. I've got to confess at this point in time, I have no issues with the car park charges being raised. You made the example of Lyme Regis, £2 a day. I think was exceptionally cheap and needed to be reviewed. However, there are other implications to actually raising car parking charges, and that's what I can't understand why that wasn't brought up at the same time. If you take Lyme Regis as an example, I know it well, it is my patch. There is a lot of hunting between the two large Dorset Council car parks on either end of the town. And because they're so cheap, there's movement back and forward across the town, causing traffic problems, causing increased pollution, whatever. To increase to £4 a day is going to make no difference whatsoever to that. There is also a park and ride in Lyme Regis. And again, the idea would have always been to actually encourage people to use the park and ride, and increase to £4 a day does not do that either. So there are many other factors to bear in mind when you actually do something what looks as simple as change your car park price. We've already heard about the issue to charging to 8 o'clock at night. There's obviously an impact on the early evening businesses, particularly again in our tourist areas. We should be encouraging people at this stage of the game to actually spend their money and eat out in the evenings, not discourage them. And again, there's also this issue with some of our younger employees in the tourist industry that are paid very low wages, to be fair. Their outgoings have been doubled at the flick of a switch. So there's so much to bear in mind when you make a decision like this, then I think it should be reviewed. 2 real points. One, the review with scrutiny I hopefully will take part in, just to see how this decision was made, because it's, in my opinion, wholly wrong. And 2, for us to look at a full report with a full impact of something as simple as a car parking charging on our communities needs to be looked at and needs to be brought to overview, as far as I'm concerned. So that's where we are. Are there any other comments by members?
Chair, we've got a lot of people wishing to speak. The first one now is Councillor Ryan Hope, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think you've just used your power as Chair in the introduction to cover most of what I wanted to bring. This is going to have a real big impact onto our economic growth in our towns and recovery after COVID, especially with the introduction of later night parking charges. That's going to have a huge effect on our businesses. There is an outright cry to this decision and how it's been made. There's been no consultation with any Chamber of Commerce or Town Council or even local members to how this will affect us and our residents. So I'd wholeheartedly support your calls for this to be called in for scrutiny and a wider view of the policy we brought for this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Hope.
Yeah, next up is Councillor Batstone, please, Chair.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I'm sorry, I'm very distrustful of this technology. I totally support your comments, both introductory and subsequent, Chairman. I felt they were remarkably restrained, and my own were not as restrained when I heard what was proposed. I would say that whilst I appreciate the issues of the towns along the coast where there are tourist issues, the problems with the market towns are, some of those are the same problems, some are different. I worry about the increased amount of on-street parking that we'll see in Stumps Newton, for example. I worry about the impact on our pubs and cafes. They're struggling at the moment anyway. We're not somewhere where people are going to go out desperately late, and having to pay until 8 o'clock is going to have an impact, and the whole issue of the lack of consultation, Chairman. So those are my thoughts. We must bring it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Batstone.
Next, Councillor Tarr, please.
Well, I'd like to back up what Councillor Backstone's just said, and your own comments, Deputy Chairman, Vice Chairman, that we need to look at street parking. That is the biggest issue at the moment, that when you put up prices on car parks, everybody parks in the streets. It's absolute chaos at the moment. That is needs to be brought into this equation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tarr.
Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you. It is the on-street parking that is a real problem. So if we look in the area that I serve on, you've got a lot of very low paid workers at the laundry who cannot afford to pay all day. And so, of course, they're building up on the local streets, which causes a huge problem. So that's one thing. But I wonder, as part of what we do, to actually then look further at perhaps what we can do better with parking permits, because not very many people actually know how to get one, what it costs, because actually they're not bad value for money. So I think we could do better with parking permits. And to take it one step further, look at the messaging on this. It's how it got out in the first place. So this actually comes back to comms, and I think we need to dig into that area a little bit so that we don't have this happen again, basically.
Yeah,
thank
you, Councillor Jones. Totally agree with that. I think scrutiny will look at that. Scrutiny are going to be looking at how the decision was made, and that includes the communications. And I think your comment on parking pyramids is, again, something comms could probably pick up and run with as well. So we've got those.
Next is
Fry. Who's next?
Councillor Jesperson, please.
Councillor Jesperson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. This whole discussion indicates, does it not, that parking charges, the discussion on parking charges and parking is about so much more than just revenue for the council. It's a complex interesting, knotty problem, and one that I think will have changed considerably, was already changing considerably with the slow death of our town centres and our market towns, and will have changed considerably post-COVID. So I'm very confident, but I would urge that when the piece of work is done by officers and members to look at this wholesale review of parking, that it takes into account all of the things that you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone else has been indicating today, and that we have a proper review. Parking was in my portfolio back in the day at North Dorset, and as long ago as on the shadow executive, I was calling for a much more imaginative look at the role of car parks and car parking charges and car parking in our towns, and how we can use them to boost our economy and not be an apparent constraint on trade. The 8 o'clock in the evening, which has come for me from absolutely out of left field, is a case in point. I can see that can do a good deal of damage, and I would be very surprised if it will bring in much revenue. So could we call, please, for a wholesale review, an imaginative look of the role of car parks and car parking charges and car parking regulations to boost our economy, and going forward, looking at how we might do it from now onwards, not how we did it in the past, and harmonising old-fashioned policies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's excellent. Thank you, Sherry. That's spot on. I think that's what we need to take forward in our notes to both licensing committee prior to this and the cabinet as soon as possible. Thank you. Have we got anybody else?
Yeah,
Councillor Fry?
Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to point out a little bit about what's going on, because obviously people are making assumptions. But can I just say that I feel on behalf of the chairman that to say that everybody's parking is doubled is a little bit, I feel, inflammatory, because it's not the case. It's not doubled all across the board. So I think, you know, the charges as are at the moment are an interim step. We are working on residence permits. Currently they're available in, I think it was the old West Dorset patch, and we're looking at rolling those out across the whole of Dorset, so that the residents actually can purchase a permit at a discounted rate, so that we don't, because we don't actually want to hit the economy. That obviously, economic development and the parking and things all come under Matthew Piles, and he's obviously been closely involved in this as well. So we are aware of the potential impacts on the economy, and it is something that we're looking at as we go along, and we'll stay hand in hand with any potential rises in parking. The other thing is that we are, again, already looking at displacement to on-street parking. We had an issue a little while ago at Moors Valley Country Park where we had to restrict the numbers in there because of COVID, and the upshot of that was that people having driven there, started to park on the streets and try and walk around other areas. So that is also high on our agenda. Obviously, we need to have some more discussions with comms about, how things get put out. And I understand your frustrations on that. So just to say that whilst it may have come as a bit of a curved ball, there has been a lot of work by the officers and Ray Bryan particularly so far. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you, Councillor Brooks. I must say that if all those things were in train and in thought, it amazes me that press release ever happened. Have we got anybody else, Councillor Fry?
Councillor Pothery next, please.
Thank you, Councillor Pothery.
Thank you, Chair. Oh dear, I think unfortunately the way this issue has been sprung on councillors is very unsettling. I don't think there was hardly a councillor this weekend that didn't have a bit of a wobble on this one. Whilst I can understand the wish to have a new harmonisation policy, we are a very diverse county, you know. I know it's easy to say, well, it's a rural county, but there are different offers, particularly for tourism, between the hinterland and our coast. You know, I don't think one size is going to fit all here. No. I think it's car parking. To go back to what Councillor Jesperson said, before it was her portfolio, it was mine, and I remember doing a car parking review, and it was fraught, top to bottom. It was fraught. It is a very thorny issue which needs very careful handling and a lot of consultation to try and pick our way through to the best result we can come up with. But at the moment, we have to think about business, frankly. There's hardly a business that hasn't taken a hit this year, and we just need to bear that in mind for now and an eye to the future, so that it's fair and equitable and nobody's going to carry a huge burden as against one town to another. I'm sorry, I've rambled a bit, but
no, it's totally understood. Thank you. I think we've collected enough comments to put this forward. My thinking is we push it forward fairly rapidly to leader and portfolio holder, as well as the cabinet in general. So we'll gather these comments and do just that. But I thought it's a new committee. The overview is here to actually overview and to actually be able to act on these issues ASAP is something very much I'm interested in doing, rather than wait for the 6-week cycle for another meeting. So that's good. That's excellent. Thank you very much for that. Item 10 is exempt business, and there is none, and therefore the meeting is closed at 11:01. Thank you very much for everybody's attendance.